My name is Jonathan Redbird Dover. I'm a retired Navajo Ranger. I started in 1980 and retired in 2011. I was a sergeant there, an officer, and also a lieutenant when I retired.
Jonathan, explain to us the duties of a Navajo Ranger.
A Navajo Ranger is involved in resource law enforcement. So we're looking at renewable and non-renewable resources. So it covers fish and wildlife, it covers forestry, water resources, minerals. Um, we patrol the lakes, we have boat operations. Uh, it has a component for archaeological resources, which I was a specialist in, search and rescue functions, and just parks in the parks area. We are the park police.
So, in essence, you're a lot like a fish and game warden.
Well, yeah, but we don't just leave it there. We have to put on that police officer's hat every now and then. And then for me, I was a licensed EMT, so I had to put on a medical hat and do crash injury management and medical emergencies also.
So, would your officers back up tribal police?
Yes, yes. We would back up tribal police on numerous occasions, and sometimes we were the only ones that were present and had to wait for an hour or two before a police officer was able to show up.
And just for clarity, you're a tribal member too.
Yes, I'm a tribal member. I have a Navajo census number since I was an infant, and so in order to work for the tribe, you have to either be a tribal member or married to a tribal member.
So, in my research of tribal members, the relationship with the Navajo Rangers, there's been always been a lot of talk about you investigating unusual things that most people would never think you would step into. Example, I've heard rumors that you'd investigate UFOs, Bigfoot, Skinwalker. Is this true?
Yes, it is very true.
And what's the perception that tribal members have about those issues?
Well, traditionally, the tribal members have a lot of respect for the Rangers because the Rangers are more personable. They work directly with people. We were based on the National Park Service Ranger, so we're there to help people, and that was our main mission. So when it came to this kind of stuff, there were people out there that were having experiences with various types of phenomenon. And our director actually assigned us. I like to say we were voluntold to do this. And so we just looked at each other and we said, wow, I guess we're the Navajo X-Files. Um, but we didn't raise our hands. They tell you never volunteer for anything.
What, when you were growing up, what kind of information were you given as a child, as a teenager, about, let's just say, Bigfoot? What was the belief system in the tribe about that topic?
Well, I'm going to have to qualify this statement. Um, I grew up at both me and Stan. I grew up in Los Angeles in a city environment, and I would spend every summer on the Navajo reservation. So we're kind of two different cultures right there. Stan, on the other hand, was born uh, on the reservation, but as an infant was moved to Tahlequah, Oklahoma, where he grew up. And so he spent his summers on the reservation. So we're both have dual cultures. And as such, most Navajos will not get involved in these kind of cases. But coming from a different background, we were able to do that. And we had to learn the histories. We had to learn all the nuances of what we were doing and how to protect ourselves. So we talked to a lot of medicine men about how to do that.
So when your director says, I have this Bigfoot incident. I want you to look into it. So are you saying that the majority of the rangers would not want to look into it?
That's correct. I actually had rangers that I was trying to train to do archaeological law enforcement, and the taboos are so strong if you're raised there that you're told you don't go to those places. And it was, you'd have to literally get behind them and push them to get onto the archaeological site because they're so fearful. They're told that this ghost that are there from 700 and 900 years is going to attach to you and follow you home and terrorize you.
So this is a good walk into when you speak about the archaeological side to your law enforcement. You did a segment on Skinwalker Ranch where there was a circular profile of a series of rocks. Could you explain that to us?
Okay, up near the ranch, there is a circular um, there's a circular profile of rocks they're huge. I mean, these are not naturally occurring boulders. They are something that was placed there purposely. And within these rocks, there's a mound. And in order to get up to the top of the mound, there's a circular trail. The mound is only about 15 feet tall, but there's a circular trail that, if you looked at it from above, forms a spiral. Uh, they showed that to me. There's some petroglyphs on those boulders that indicate that this was put in 500 to 700 years ago, possibly by the Fremont people. And so this is a place of ceremony, as near as I can tell. The spiral indicates that uh, what I've done is I've reinterpreted the original spiral as a sign of migration. And so this is what I've been told by Navajos and Hopis. But if you look at migration, the Navajos came through several worlds, three other worlds to get to this world that they call the Shining World. In two worlds, the second and the third world, they climbed up through a hole in the sky and entered into another world. So what I've done is I've reinterpreted this as a migration through different dimensions. And it's the only theory that actually fits, which makes the Navajo creation story all the more real. It ceases to become a myth and actually becomes word for word oral history.
So that circular profile ascending into the sky, could that also be interpreted as a portal?
That's very correct. Yes, and I told the crew up there that there was possibly a portal at that location, and they did photogrammetry on the area, and the two areas where these photos were hanging in the air, looking like miniature tornadoes, were over the triangle site and over that structure.
So in the Four Corners area, we did some work on some missing people a couple of movies ago, and there was that center figure that you're talking about on the wall of a path. And at the time, a ranger said, yeah, that it was their belief that the people living there had this same belief that you talked about a portal. Now, when Mr. Bigelow owned Skinwalker Ranch, he had a physicist and he had the head of the team there, and they described something opening almost like a tunnel, and they saw something crawl out of the tunnel, step down onto the ground, and run away like a man. And many of the interpretations of that were that it was Bigfoot related. Could that be a Bigfoot related issue?
I believe it could be. Um, I've talked to numerous people, especially up in the Pacific Northwest. They tell me that they've encountered Bigfoot, and they've actually watched him from, he's behind a tree looking at them, and they watched him as he faded out and vanished right in front of their eyes. These are native members up in the Quinault tribe reservation. So more than one person told me stories like this, that they just vanish. Now, Stan and I have tracked them in our investigations, and we follow the tracks from the location where the incident occurred in the direction that it was going.
Well, let's start.
Okay.
Explain the incident.
Okay. In this case, we had a lady that called us, an elderly woman, and a Bigfoot had walked up to her corral, stepped over the corral, um, tucked this sheep under its arm, and walked off. Stepped back over the corral and just walked off with it. Um, Historically, Navajos are told, Bigfoot does exist, but you leave it alone. Don't look at them. Just leave it alone. Uh, she was upset because she didn't have very many sheep, and she wanted the rangers to do something about it. So me and Stan started tracking this creature, and we tracked it for about a mile or so. And as we were tracking, both me and Stan are very, very good trackers, and we lost the tracks in trackable ground. Now, you ask, what does that mean? Well, if the thing had taken another step, it would have left a footprint. That's what we call trackable ground. Uh, in this case, we have a 5-foot stride from heel to heel. And we actually pin flagged it and took photographs of the stride marks. Um, we get to a point where the tracks disappear. They're gone. So we start doing what they call cutting sign, which is working in a spiral that keeps expanding. And what you're looking for is pebbles pushed into the ground. You're looking for any blades of grass that are bent down that would indicate something, moved through there. In this case, there was duff, which is some pine needle material. And we couldn't find anything, no matter how far out we went. So we came back and we backtracked it back to the scene, and we went the other direction on which way it came in. Same thing, the tracks just appeared in trackable ground, just like it had been dropped from the sky. So we came up with the opinion, and this is our speculation, that Bigfoot is a pan-dimensional being. And what bolsters that is that we have not found his bones, we have not found his scat, we have not found any evidence that he lives there on a long-term basis. And then you go into the Navajo creation story with people coming through a portal into this world, and they came through the sky. They're looking up, and they have to put something up there to climb up. So that tells me that they're not. These portals are not something that's you see a doorway and you go through it, and it could be 200, 500 feet up in the sky, depending on what has happened in the topography of that region.
You said something to me that is really important, and that is that Bigfoot that you were tracking was carrying a sheep. And was there ever any indication he dropped the sheep?
None. There was no indication that he let sheep go. He just kept going.
So as he kept going, apparently he had the ability to go into another dimension through this portal with something other than him.
That's correct.
So there's been a lot of rumors and conjectures over the years that Bigfoot could take people. Now, something that was always an obstruction in my mind is that, okay, maybe the Bigfoot can go into another dimension, but it would be hard to understand for me that it could take another object, an animal or a person, and also go into that other dimension. Have you ever done any research or ever talked to anybody who claimed that a Bigfoot took some people?
No, we've never run into any situation like that. although we do have a lot of missing persons cases. It's so remote out there that information doesn't come in very quickly. Even cattle that are mutilated in conjunction with UFO sightings, many times it happens, but we don't get the report till 2 weeks to a month later.
So when you and Stan was your partner.
Yes.
So you and Stan are out there. You find the tracks that just stop in the where they should continue, and you backtrack and you find them that they just start where there was really no. There was just a start point, but there was no history of tracks behind it. What was the conversation like between the two of you?
It's perplexing, um, a little bit frustrating because we consider ourselves very good trackers. I've tracked people for 30 miles, and I can tell when they stop, when they use the bathroom, when they turn around and look back, or you're always you're trying to guess, you're trying to use the information from their tracks to show where they're going to end up, and then get into their mind so you can see their thinking. Are they going a hard way? Are they going an easy way? Um, and once you find the general direction that they're heading, even though they're zigzagging, you can actually move all the way around them and ambush them on the other side.
So was your perspective, your personal perspective about Bigfoot, changed by this incident?
Oh yeah, very much so. Before, we assumed that it was just some animal that migrated that was living here. But like I said, we're out in the forest all the time. That's where we operate. And we've never had anybody come to us saying, I found these bones, I found a hide, I found, this big pile of scat out there that doesn't resemble anything that an animal out here would have. Nothing like that.
When you were looking at the track of the Bigfoot, uh, obviously it was much bigger than a human track.
This particular track measured 21 inches. So unless something's out there bigger than Shaquille O'Neal, uh, I wouldn't want to meet it. I mean, it's big.
Was the perspective of that track when you were looking at it, did it remind you of a human track?
It looked exactly like a large version of a human track. It had toes. It had 5 toes. It was very flat and wide. And we took pictures of it. I think we've got some plaster casts, um, that we're going to be taking with us to some of these conferences. So, but those are smaller ones. So we've seen all different sizes of tracks, but they're all very similar.
And Jonathan, what do you say to somebody who hears this story and says, that's a wives' tale, not true?
Well, our standard, uh, I'm going to have to digress here just a little bit, but our standard for collecting evidence and has to be like a law enforcement criminal investigator that's working a homicide case. If you're going to charge somebody and submit evidence to the federal court, you have to be 99.9% sure that that thing is what you say it is. That's our threshold of what we want as evidence. So we don't use like a civil case where you have preponderance of evidence and you're only trying to convince somebody 51% of the time. You have to be absolutely sure. Otherwise, your evidence gets kicked out. So that's our standard of what we look for. And for the people that think, so what? This is all myth anyway. Um, all I can say is, you weren't there. You didn't see this stuff. I was. And I documented it because it was an active case and we had to write reports. These reports were all locked down at the end of our time after they were submitted, with only the director and us having access to them, because we guaranteed people's anonymity. Otherwise, they would not report these things.
You said something earlier that tweaked something in my mind. Many people have put together UFO sightings and Bigfoot. Have you ever seen any correlation between the two on the reservation?
Yes, we've actually encountered things for 30 years, 31 years, my whole career. However, 11 of those years were where we were assigned to officially investigate these cases. During those 11 years, we got a lot of reports from our dispatcher telling us that, so and so reported a flyover of a UFO, so and so reported a Bigfoot in the forest. And what we started seeing, they call them UFO flaps, where you have greater activity of UFO sightings. During those flaps, we would see increases in Bigfoot sightings that corresponded to the UFO sightings, or vice versa. So it was almost a given thing that if we had more UFO sightings, by the same token, we'd have more Bigfoot sightings.
Did that ever mean anything to you?
We started looking at that and trying to, as investigators, we want to know why. And a lot of times you don't get that kind of information, so you have to make suppositions and we call it a swag, a scientific wild guess. And in our time, we've determined that what if these things are? We know that UFOs pop in and out of possible portals. We've had people describe them as a loud pop that just the sound went through your body like a blow. And they look up and there's this, ball floating in the sky above them. After a while, it flies around a little bit and then it just suddenly fades out and disappears. We think that they're coming in through a parallel or a different dimension, different frequency from ours. And that displacement of air is what's causing that sound. Um, in the same token, the Bigfoot is also able to manipulate these portals. And we asked ourselves why. If you look at um, cattle, you open a gate on a right of way fence. Suddenly, all those cattle are at that gate and going through, even if there's a cattle guard there, they're going through that gate because there's forage along the right of way that's much better than what they have on their range. And it's an axiom out there that if you open a gate, the cattle will move toward it. What if, and this is conjecture, but what if when these portals open, the Bigfoot goes, oh, there's forage, there's things on the other side that we like. Let's go get it. And whichever one is closest to that gate can go right through, just like the UFOs can go through. It's I don't know if it's manipulated by them in some way, but there's definitely something going on where they're coming here.
Do you think that there's something about the reservation and the people that attracts this?
I think that the reservation for most of the tribal members, when they signed the Treaty of 1868, livestock ownership became a right. It was a concession by the government that you can own livestock. And Navajos consider this a form of wealth. So they have sheep, they have cattle, they have horses. Now they even have llamas. Um, the point that I'm making is that um, when these animals disappear, they generally know that something happened, especially if a Bigfoot comes walking up to your house and you see it step over the corral. So they want something done and they're fearful. Um, and that was one of the main reasons we got involved in these cases. We were told that grandma and grandpa out there live by themselves. An unusual creature comes to their house. They're fearful. They want to know somebody cares enough about them to investigate this thing seriously.
Would a Navajo tribal member ever purposely try to injure a Bigfoot?
Yes. Yeah. We actually had another agency, I won't say who it is, that said uh, if they saw one, they would shoot at it automatically. When we understood that that information was getting out there, we very quietly put in a unofficial no shoot policy, and we told our rangers, you will not shoot at it unless it is attacking you or somebody else. Leave it alone, let it go. Even if you're, the idea is that if you shoot one, you're going to be famous because now you have proof. So we told them no, you know, and the reasoning behind this is we didn't want somebody to shoot one and find out there's a guy in a zippered suit that was playing a prank. And so we figured let's head this off at the pass and take care of it now so there's no doubt as to where we stand with this.
Has there been any history of someone in a suit playing a prank on the
They've
on the reservation?
We have had people setting up cardboard cutouts in the edge of the forest, and just to see people slam their brakes on and jump out with their cell phones. Um, so yeah, yeah, there's been some pranking going on.
So let's speak just solely of a tribal
Yeah,
member, not a law enforcement agency, not anything from the government. Would a tribal member shoot at a Bigfoot?
I believe they would. You have to understand that there's different generations now. The old generation was told you leave it alone, you don't look at it because if you look at it, it can take over your mind. Um, so have not just leave it alone and let it go about its business, and you go about yours. The younger generation, uh, they they see the TV shows, they see and they know that if I shoot one, I might be able to get famous. I might be able to sell this thing. And I've had young people go out to archaeological sites and dig up graves and take the pottery and take it down to the flea market and try to sell it for the cost of a six pack. So it's the morals of the tribe are disappearing because if you look at the history, these kids have there's third, fourth generation kids out there now that grew up in the boarding schools. They didn't grow up at home. They didn't learn the traditional lessons.
Talk about Brenda Harris for a second. Tell us about that incident, how you got involved.
We got involved with Brenda Harris in an oblique manner. We had over 30 sightings of people that reported Bigfoot along the San Juan River up in the Bloomfield to Shiprock area. Um,
What year
the,
was this?
this was 2000. This was actually our very first large-scale case. We What had happened is they went to the police department in Shiprock, and the lieutenant there was talking to the press, and they asked him about, well, what about all this Bigfoot stuff? And he's laughed and says, "Ha! I wonder how much these people have had to drink," which pretty much alienated everybody in the community. So they basically said, we want nothing to do with the police department anymore. And they contacted the Rangers department. We sent a 6-person crew up there that were basically our SWAT team members. They were armed with PVS 14 night vision equipment. We had 3 forward-looking infrared systems, Rayethon systems, and so we could detect body heat, we could detect movement in the dark, and we spent 2 nights and 3 days going along the river, contacting people, getting statements from them, and getting their stories as to what they had seen or where they had seen it. And at night, we set up surveillance along different sections of the river to try to see something. We didn't, but we did find foot tracks. We did find stride distances. We did find hair samples. I even found one place where a Bigfoot had gone over to a waterlogged log. The log had to be about this big, and when you have a log that's completely soaked in water, it's heavy, and this thing just it was buried halfway in the mud, and it picked it up and tossed it to the side. And I don't know of anybody that would pick up a log like that with tools or anything else for no particular reason
What was
out in the Tamarisk.
what was the rationale to move the log
We had a Bigfoot uh, expert with us, and he told us that it was looking for grubs
under the log?
under the log. But
So the strides you saw and the tracks you saw, were they consistent with something big and large?
oh yeah, definitely. Again, 18-inch footprints, stride distances of 4.5, 5 feet. And just to give you some idea, I would have to do the splits to do a 5 foot stride. And, I can't do the splits. So, um, I'd have to jump from one foot to the other. And you could only do that a few times and you'd be out of breath.
So since you are an experienced trained tracker, when you saw these, was there any thought in your mind that these were fabricated and hoaxed?
Well, when you track, if there's a certain way a foot moves that you're looking for, you can tell if somebody walks backwards just from how the sand is moved. So you can tell direction. Um, if it's if it's like a board or something where somebody's walking on stilts, um, it would be very very hard to do, and the steps, the tracks wouldn't be the same. You could tell right away. And these were very organic looking.
So even like the toe splay would be different.
Yeah.
Okay, so go on with Brenda.
So we moved our way up the river, and we did talk to Brenda up there. At the time, she was just a witness and hadn't become involved in this. Um, she was living in a different location at that point, and there was an interesting story that went with that. Was that there was a boy that was their field is the river corridor is down on the bottom. They have a long embankment, and I think this was her family, but I'm not sure. But there was a boy that was told, 50 yards down this slope, and he was told they could hear noise down in the field where they had watermelons and plants growing, and it sounded like a horse's hoof that was stepping. It was heavy enough that it made noise. So they told the boy to go down to the river, take his BB gun, and chase the horses out of the field. So he goes charging down there, with a mission. And basically, when he got down there, slid to a stop at the very bottom because he almost ran into this thing. And he says it was a big, tall, hairy creature, hair all over him. And he said it smelled really, really bad. He says it smelled like a really bad wet dog smell. He falls down, looking at it, drops his gun, scrambles backwards, and turns around and runs back up the hill. So I think that was either near her or maybe it was her family. I'm pretty sure she knows about that story. We didn't encounter any live Bigfoot in the deal, but all this is Tamarisk area. So if you can imagine, some holes you're crawling through them to get through this stuff. It's so thick, you're just pushing it aside to get through these tiny little game trails, and uh, and then you get in there and you start thinking, what if this thing comes out? So it's a little bit there's a little anxiety there when you go through. The other thing you have to watch out for is feral cattle. And I don't know if you've ever seen a totally wild cow, but they are intelligent and they will stalk you. and I've had them stalk me through Tamarisk like that. So, you see these horns, that are just pointy on the end, and this cow's just moving along with you, following you through this stuff, looking like it's going to attack at any point. And you realize that little pea shooter you're carrying on your hip might not stop it for a few rounds.
So, what was the catalyst that brought in all the rangers to that area? You said that there were a bunch of sightings.
Yeah, yeah. There were over 30 people that reported seeing a Bigfoot.
Had that ever happened before?
No, no, we've never seen that. And we come to find out that this is a regular thing up there. That this isn't the only time that a Bigfoot has been seen. The area provides a lot of cover. If you're moving through, there's a lot of game in there. There's fish in the water, catfish and things like that.
In the San Juan.
In the San Juan River, yeah.
Were all these sightings in fairly close proximity to the river?
Yeah, actually they were, um, all along that river corridor.
So that almost makes the river could be a transportation mode for the Bigfoot.
It could be, yes. Or it could allow them cover to move through, and, if they're on their way somewhere else, or to hunt game.
Especially if the boy said it smelled like a big wet dog. Might have come out of the river.
Right.
Had you ever heard of any reports associating a Bigfoot with being in the river?
Absolutely. No, we have not. We've never heard of one that was wet like that.
You ever get any reports from the Navajo tribal guides that take hunters out of them seeing a Bigfoot?
We never got any reports from them, but we've talked to some of the guides who said that they've seen evidence that Bigfoot was out there, but it was just in passing, but they had a client with them. They're looking for elk or deer, so they just noted it.
So, towards the end of your career, Jonathan, what was your personal perspective about Bigfoot?
That Bigfoot is real. That definitely real. I mean, as physical as you and me. We even had one that walked into the jail section of a police department up there in Window Rock. Um, these are old buildings, built in the 1960s, and as such, they have no ventilation systems that are very good or up to date. So we have a situation one year. I think this was had to be about 2003 or 2004. And this is just anecdotal information that's coming our way. We weren't able to verify it. But the story is that it's at night. It's during the summer. There's no ventilation in the place. Long hallway and a back door. So the jailers are up front in the office with their own little air conditioner and fans. They hear screaming taking place because they had opened the back door to let air into the jail section. And they have a drunk tank there that just has bars, and it's one cell, and you throw all your drunks in there and clean them up the next day for court. So all these guys are screaming and hollering. The jailers go, what the hell's going on? So they, get their equipment and go down the hallway. And they said all these prisoners are up in one corner of the cell, just screaming bloody murder. And they're frightened. And when they, of course, the jailers are saying, what the heck's going on here? And they said that something had come in the back door that was tall and hairy and smelled and stood there at the bars and looked at them. And of course, they all crowded back. I'd like to think that some of those guys probably quit drinking, but, I have no idea. And they said after, a few seconds, it turned and walked out the back door again and disappeared.
What's your belief about why there aren't more game camera footage, there aren't more photographs, there isn't more video of this thing being captured by residents, by Forest Service, by tribal police? There's probably 5 million game cameras out there in the woods. How come we can't catch this thing on game camera?
It's our opinion that Bigfoot has different senses or more attuned senses than we do. If you look at our ability to see, it's actually very narrow, and you have X-rays, I guess, on this side, and you have infrared on this side. So we don't see in any of those other spectrums. We just see visible things. Our hearing too, and talking to a guy that has a hearing aid, uh, we don't hear very well. You look at a dog, he hears, his ears will go up, he'll look at things, even cats, and you're looking at them going, what did they just hear? So, we use them to go hunt birds. Um, we use them all the time for other things. So we don't have the capability. I think that the Bigfoot can actually hear the camera clicking. One of our friends up in Dulce was on those Finding Bigfoot series, and he said that he set up a game camera, and it just took a bunch of pictures, but there was nothing on the picture. And he says later on he went back and looked at them closer, and he could see something blurry in there. What this thing had done is it had taken a big piece of like sawgrass or something, some prairie grass, and it went on the side of the camera, and it was going like this to the camera, and the camera was taking pictures. These cameras also use infrared to see things. What if that animal can see infrared light? So, it's able to avoid those type of things. Anytime there's game cameras out, you get a very blurry image of something close up. All you see is brown blur. Um, you never get a clear image. And so I think that the Bigfoot has different senses than we do. We look at things and we say, well, in my experience, in my physiology, this is what I can do. So this thing must be the same. It's an animal, not necessarily.
What about infrasound?
We looked at there's old stories that go back. One of them is from the Coyote Canyon area, which is north of Gallup, where Navajos had acquired horses. So this would put it about the middle 1600s. And they're riding their horses out there, and they saw Bigfoot walking through the desert. They went around it and roped it, and they're using horsehair lariats, braided horsehair. They roped this thing and held it between them on their horses. They said, the story says from the medicine man, that this thing sat down and just sat there, and it started to speak to them in their own language. Now, Navajo is a hard language. It was so hard that it was used during World War II as one of the code talking languages, along with other Indian tribes. Even for me, being Navajo, I don't speak Navajo because I didn't grow up learning how. And it's not something that's easy to pick up. So, but Navajo is very precise. It's very descriptive. So what happens is that this thing starts talking to them, and it tells them, if you take me to Mesa Verde and let me go, I will not come back this way again. So they rode with it all the way up to Colorado and released it up there. That's the story. That's the story as told by medicine men. So Bigfoot goes back all the way for Navajos back to the 1600s. Then you get to this idea that Navajos are taught never look at it in the eyes. If you do, it can take control of your mind. What if there's some kind of telepathy going on and it's communicating that way, and you can hear it, but you're hearing it in whatever language you speak, but it's making sense.
Have you heard stories about mind speak?
We have heard stories about that. Again, that goes back way into the history. And it's something that apparently for most Navajos, it's not easily obtainable anymore. Um, Although you have Navajos that are gifted in languages and can speak languages.
Well, I've heard stories that people that are sensitive say that Bigfoot can speak in their mind and they can hear him talking to them.
This may be why the idea that you don't look at it in the eyes, it can take over your mind. We usually hear these stories about sensitives being able to pick up this stuff. Um, I have no doubt that this exists, that it happens. Um, in my law enforcement career, I've actually had to rely on what we call a sixth sense, that something is not quite right. Maybe you shouldn't turn the corner on that door, or maybe you shouldn't go this direction, and vice versa. Because I was licensed as an EMT, um, you're told in academy never take the same route home every day because somebody could ambush you on the way. And we're driving our tribal vehicles, law enforcement vehicles. And I've actually had somebody fire a round into my windshield coming out of Gallup. So I made sure, they say perfect practice makes perfect. So I would follow this religiously. And I had 6 different directions I could travel home. I had a 125-mile drive to get home every day. So that's 2 hours on the road and then 2 hours to get to work. And I was on duty the whole time. And what I would do is sometimes I'd take a mental proverbial stick and throw it up in the air, and whichever way it fell and pointed, that's the direction I'd go. It would seem that no matter which direction I went, there was always a medical emergency of some kind. There was a medical assist, somebody overdosed, somebody fell and broke their arm or something. There's ambulances an hour away, um, or there's an accident and multiple victims, and nobody's on the scene, nobody's nearby, ambulances an hour. So I would respond to those, and it got to the point where it was too coincidental, and I just accepted it because there was a need for me to be there. I went the direction that there was a need.
So, which power was controlling that?
I don't know. You can say serendipity, you can say karma. All I know is that I allowed it to happen. I didn't fight it. It just became normal.
That's amazing. And it might have kept you alive.
I believe it kept me alive on more than one occasion. And I've also experienced in my lifetime many incidents of deja vu. And, you know, you dream something maybe a year before, and then suddenly you're in that situation and you go, boom, oh yeah, I've dreamed this. And you can actually sit there and watch this whole thing play out for, 30 seconds or 15 seconds, and then realize that you had this dream maybe a year before. I'm going down the road from Burnside Junction on Navajo Route 15 heading west. It's late in the evening. The sun's going down. As I'm driving, I get to this quarter-mile section right near cornfields, and the road drops down, and it goes for about a quarter mile, and it comes back up, and there's a wash area in there. There's no right-of-way fence, and this road is at that time was notorious for having animals on the road. As I'm driving, I flashed. I've had this dream. In my dream, I hit a horse, and my vehicle was upside down. I'm hanging from the seatbelt. And I'm thinking to myself, how the heck am I going to explain this? Because I just lost my vehicle. So as I realized that, I let off the accelerator. Now I'm doing about 60, 65. I let off the accelerator suddenly. In front of me, a herd of horses ran from left to right, and in my rearview mirror, I could see the same herd behind me, just thundering through. I hit that one tiny gap in the middle of the herd of about maybe 25, 30 horses. And, my heart's going like crazy, and I'm going, oh man, Um, so I came to the conclusion that while you can't necessarily change some of the things, you can influence some of it. It's like being in a half pipe, and you can move. You're sliding down this pipe, but you can move a little bit to either side. And that was the real indication to me that precognitive dream. Um, and I just accept it. It happens every now and then, and I just think, wow, it's still there.
So let's say someday, Jonathan, you're on stage and you made your presentation, and I've seen your presentation, it's really good. And you have somebody else on stage there, and that other person is stating that Bigfoot is in that ape gorilla family, and they're adamant about their beliefs. What do you say to the audience to counter that?
Everybody is entitled to believe what they want to believe. Um, when we go into a situation, we don't have a preconceived idea of what we're looking at. We don't go in and expect to see a Bigfoot track or expect to see anything. We go in with this idea that, you show me the evidence, and I'll look at the evidence and I'll verify that it's real. So I've got enough evidence on myself, from numerous investigations, that I know these things exist. There isn't a doubt in my mind. But for somebody who hasn't been in the field, who's done research and looks at, this kind of stuff, I go, oh, you poor thing. But they're entitled to their opinion. Um, if you look at DNA, we sent hair samples off and it came back unknown carnivore. When you realize that there's millions of animals in a worldwide DNA database and this thing doesn't show up, then there's obviously something there that if it was living here, if it was an unknown species of ape, why haven't we found the bones? Why haven't we found the skin or burials for that matter? You know, we don't find any of that. We don't even find its scat.
And if it lived here, you and Stan would be able to track it,
Right.
correct?
Yeah, we would track it. And even a mountain lion runs a 50 square mile range and has a 30-day window when he's going to come back to a kill. And we learned that from tracking mountain lions and looking for them. So if he's living here, there's a certain amount of land that he's running territorial, and he's going to be in that place. So within that geographic area, there's going to be more and more sign of him. You don't see that.
So what did your administration think about you guys going out and investigating skinwalkers, Bigfoot, UFOs?
Well, they wanted us to do it. They actually ordered us to investigate these things. Me and Stan were the principal investigators, certified investigators. And so, like I said, we like to use the term we were voluntold. We didn't volunteer, we didn't raise our hands. They just said, you're assigned.
Did the press in your area pick up on the investigations at all?
Absolutely not. We were very low key. We didn't talk about it. We always guaranteed people anonymity. And so we didn't want to bring the press in and say, look at what we're doing. Plus, when we first got into the speaking thing, we actually, this was 2010, we said, actually 2011, We said, let's go down to where all the crazy people are at the International UFO Congress and, put our tinfoil hats on for protection and see if we can find books because we were voraciously reading stuff on all these subjects, on hauntings, on UFOs and Bigfoot. And so we wanted to learn as much as we can. When we got down there, we talked to some of the speakers and told them about some of our experiences, and they were like, "Oh my God, you guys need to be speakers."
So just for clarity, the people on the reservation that reported these things, they weren't looking for publicity.
No, absolutely not. We even asked people, "Why don't you report this to the Mutual UFO Network in Arizona or New Mexico?" The constant reply that we got was that if we report it, there's going to be a lot of people come out here and they won't come back. I mean, I'm talking about the phenomenon won't come back. And there's a real strong tie with UFOs and star people to the Navajo people. They were told that, like the Yebiche dancers, there are certain, and even with the Hopis, the Kachinas are gods that have come to the people and imparted knowledge. And so, they don't want those gods to go away. Those are real things to them.
So, Jonathan, when you were assigned to investigate, say, Bigfoot, was it considered a nuisance or a threat?
I think a little of both because we're talking about people that are literally traumatized by their sightings. In one case, we had a guy that was, cutting wood with a chainsaw by himself up in the mountains. He smells something, he turns and looks up, and this Bigfoot's standing right next to him. And he didn't want anyone to know who he was because he fainted and urinated on himself, which is embarrassing enough. But to this day, he won't go in the mountains and cut wood by himself anymore.
Some people who have had an encounter with a Bigfoot say that they've been told that they're here to protect the earth, protect the forest, almost like a guardian. What do you think about that?
Well, for me, in the investigations we've done, we don't have that kind of information. We don't have people, and this may be because if it results in having eye contact with it, and Navajos are told from childhood, you don't look at it. You see it. You turn your head down. You turn your head away. Let it go.
So when they turn their head, is that a turn of head in reverence, respect?
I think it's more out of fear that there's something to be fearful. Uh, this is this phenomenon of being able to communicate through your mind is fearful. It takes the idea of a ghost talking to you, maybe.
So with an education in religion, could Bigfoot be a demonic entity?
Well, we look through, um, I guess our view of things is determined by our backgrounds. So if you have a religious background, yeah, you're almost going to automatically consider Bigfoot as demonic and something to be fearful of. Um, I don't think it's demonic, although if you look at doctrines and apologetics and all that kind of stuff, you know, the idea there is that what if the demons that were cast out of heaven, um, and these are angels, by the way, they're not little red men with horns and a tail, pointed tail. They're beautiful creatures that can mimic other angels. So what if these things are trying to create their own race, just like God created His race, and they're experimenting with this, so to speak? So you run into that line of thinking, but there's just nowhere to go with that other than conjecture.